Knucklehead podcast is. Why Knucklehead? What is a podcast?
Sure.
Just break it down basics.
Yeah, I'll dive into it a couple different ways. So my background's in sales. My background's in building sales teams. I spent some time in the Marine Corps, play some college football. So small teams. Understanding there's even teams within teams when you look at the Marine Corps and even football. So one of the things that gets lost in translation a lot of times, even with these digital formats, is people are going to be attracted to what it is that you're saying as a business owner, or what your business is doing from a reputation standpoint. But in a lot of cases, they may not necessarily know much about you and how you differentiate yourself from the competition. And so what we found is just through the years of working with different organizations, regardless of what type of business it is, we found that customers really like working with people, not necessarily just businesses. However, depending upon how you position yourself, your brand or your business can be looked at differently. And so the combination of humanizing your business and then tactics that work for positioning your business as an affinity type brand, combination of both of those go really well together in a podcast. There's three forms of communication, written, spoken, and kind of nonverbal. You can classify that. You can drill into it a little bit more, but the way we think about it is those three. So why not give somebody the ability to consume more of you or listen to more of what you have to say outside of your website? Most businesses in the 21st century have a website or some type of social media presence. So why not humanize that by letting your voice essentially be piped directly into what we call your cold audience and bring dead leads to life through podcasting. That's what we do over at Knucklehead. I do a lot of things. I'm a dad. Family's probably the biggest, one of my biggest passions. I always grew up wanting to raise a family. So family has a large part to do with everything that it is that I do. Work, full-time in sales, also full-time running a production agency. We're excited about what we're doing over here at Knucklehead. We bring dead leads to life through podcasting, and I've gone through enough screw-ups along the way that whenever you start a business or whenever you talk about business, the inevitability is not necessarily the success that you're going to see. It's the screw-ups that you're going to have, and how you respond and overcome to those, what we call Knucklehead moments, is what leads to the success that you have. So rather than trying to talk about how awesome we are, we call ourselves Knuckleheads, and that's what essentially led to the inspiration behind Knucklehead Podcast, and has led to us building Knucklehead Media Group.
Love it. So that's also a term of endearment in the Marine Corps, as I understand.
Yeah, I call my kids Knuckleheads all the time. Like, they know they're doing real well when they get called a Knucklehead. I'm like, come here, Knucklehead.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Mike, that's actually a good thing to talk about because tonight's topic's training, right? So
yeah, did you tell everybody your wins, your personal, your best?
Yeah, no. We just introduced Knucklehead Podcast to Steve.
Okay.
Steve. So let's go with your wins.
Yeah, we need to know how you win in last week.
Audience, we need your wins.
We need your wins in the comments. Like we were winning on Wednesday. We need to know how you've been winning last week, both personally and professionally.
Well, personally, I got to the gym, I guess if you count last Saturday.
I do. I count 7 days.
Okay. All right. So Saturday and Sunday, I went to the gym. So yay, babe. Went to the gym.
Heading to Swoville. Love it.
About that. That's a personal win. And then also, my boy just started playing baseball, my oldest. He also wrote a little, I don't even know what you call it. I'm so ignorant when it comes to like the songs. He plays on the piano. So what do you call that? Like there's probably somebody in the chat who knows things about music. Write down what it was. He wrote like a new song.
Yeah, he wrote a song. Awesome.
Yeah, he wrote a song. So that's kind
of a daggone song. Knucklehead. That's what he did.
Exactly. Honestly, I was excited for him.
That's
about
huge. That's hard.
And also I guess another win. Knucklehead. We just essentially got green lighted on a new project that we're starting for a huge call center agency. So huge publicly traded organization out of New Jersey. We're excited about that contract. That's a big deal. So anyway, we're excited about that.
Man, that's awesome, Steven. Like, just to see you grow up, knowing this guy for, I don't know, going on 4 or 5 years now. Remembered when he kicked off Knucklehead and was telling me about it. You know what I mean? I'm just hugely excited for you and the growth that you guys have taken on over the last couple of years. And it sounds like your momentum really hit would you say about year 3, year 4 is when you really started to get that traction and developing that team and implementing those processes and really being able to scale to this New Jersey contract that you're now at your feet, right?
Honestly, yeah, it never grows as fast as you want, and it always grows slower than what you anticipate, and it's got to break a couple times. So, yeah, I appreciate that, and a lot of it has to do with a supportive environment. And even I know the topic tonight is going to be training, but the topic of surrounding yourself with like-minded folks. I had somebody come on the podcast a long time ago. He's actually come on twice. His name's Nick Ricklingler. He runs an organization called Battleside Technologies out of Ohio. And he talks a lot about, about like-hearted folks. You don't necessarily need like-minded folks. You need folks who are like-hearted surrounding you, whether that's your vendors, your customers, your teammates. And when we moved up as a family from Austin, shout out to everybody from Austin, but the reality is that there's a different thought process there in Texas than there is here in this part of Texas. And it's not that you can't find like-hearted folks down there, but you really got to look for them. And, being around this environment where there's a good group of veterans who kind of think alike, but they apply it differently in their respective fields, that like-heartedness actually raises up the standard around you. I think y'all had Mitch Onby, who's one of the longest lasting business owners in this area on your show not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're listening, go back and find the episode that he was on, or you can go to any podcast where you download your podcast and go find that episode. And what'll happen is you'll talk about the kind of the setting the foundation of what's grown over the years and how supportive each one of the entrepreneurs that are here are for other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you weed each other out because of that accountability and raising.
Well, that's the gist behind the Patriot Business Alliance. That's why we don't have no dues, no membership. It's like execution and action, and that's when you're allowed to be part of the PBA, right? Because we all see each other, we all hold ourselves accountable to a certain standard, to a certain ethic, and that's why we're going to continue to excel and crush it. So I'll share my couple of wins, and then we'll dive into our topic of training this evening. And
yeah. Hey, I just want to get a shout out.
Jack. Oh,
Jack, thank you. You gotta one, you put it in the chat, but you got to define. Is that a contract you're about to put in the bag? What's going on, man? But it sounds exciting.
I'll tell you exactly what's going on with Jack. Jack is down in Louisiana.
Is that the boy?
Yes,
boots
Jack,
on the ground in
boots
Louisiana.
on the green in Louisiana down there. That's a 90 square roof is what he's dealing with.
I was thinking it was.
Yeah,
right? So that means Amberjack and Grouper on you.
That's right.
When you come back, all right.
Yeah, they're down. The team is down there hustling. So you kind of cued me into some wins that we got going on. With the Docks Roofing, those guys are in Louisiana, crushing it, growing these 3 individuals that they just wanted to take the bull by the horns. And I was like, look, I'll support you 100%, set you up for success, and just do the plan, do the process, and don't quit. Right. So went in there. We closed on a new home this yesterday. So yeah, we're going to be moving tonight and tomorrow and whenever else I can fit it in this busy ass life of mine. But yeah, it's going to happen. So huge win. Great job, Rochelle, for sticking it out. We didn't think we were going to make it, but we turned it over to God's hand. It's kind of one of our core values is God, health, and wealth. We just kind of turned it over to a power bigger than us and said, you know what, if it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen, and then we did a free roof for a veteran quite a few times this year, and we got noticed on a national level by a talk show called Kelly Clarkson. And so it was funny because they called me.
The same American Idol?
That's right.
Hold on. We need to back up just a little bit.
Yeah, this is real. This is real. I swear to God, this happened.
Well, I don't watch the news, so you got to dive into this just a little bit.
So Docks Roofing had given away some free roofs to veterans over the course of
that I know.
Of course of 2021.
Even though I live under a rock and I don't watch the news, that I heard.
And so it got published in the Blue Ribbon News here in Rockwall. Right. Well, one of the people from the Kelly Clarkson show found that news article, calls me. I didn't recognize the number, so I was like, "This is Michael. I can help you via text." And she texted me back, And I was like, she's like, do you know who Kelly Clarkson is? I was like, yeah. I know him from Steve Carell. And she laughs, right? Because that's the only way I really knew.
Kelly Clarkson.
Yes. And so we
With
were
the
like,
waxing scene.
yeah. And so 40-year-old virgin, right?
Mike's
And
trying
so
to say
it's like-
that he too is wearing a full body sweater under that American polo.
I guarantee it.
That's
I
right.
guarantee it. But this is a different type of rating. So
Kelly
I
Clarkson.
can't. and
Shout out to Rochelle. There you go.
So at any rate, we talked and I sent her some videos, and I think they're going to have me on the show. So it's pretty freaking huge, man. I'm kind of excited. And
Hold
so
on, I gotta brag on you and Rochelle a little bit, because there's also a very big personal and professional milestone. We're not going to get into what it was, but we know what it was, and it was a big professional,
Huge.
personal milestone. Something that it was the first reason we ever met,
yes.
the first reason we ever talked,
Mm-hmm.
and is a massive accomplishment for him and his wife. And they're just a very humble people. They're not going to talk about it, but I want to let you know that I'm very, very proud.
Yeah, so we won bigger than shit in September, but we also fought for a lot of the wins.
You got to fight for the wins.
that we got.
You can't lose if you don't.
Some
quit.
of these W's came from 7 years of freaking blood, sweat, and tears. Some of these W's came from, putting in the grind, the daily consistent work, and having the naysayers and the haters and everybody destined to failure. And we were just like, nope, we're just going to keep on trucking. And so we are extremely blessed. And like you said, humbled. Thank you for that. And we look forward for the next 10 years, man. We are freaking, if you guys could feel my energy right now, you would freaking know what I'm talking about. These guys feel it because it's impossible not to.
Yeah, that's why you got to get in the right room with the right people, because you get that energy, right? You go mastermind, and I'm not talking about, a mastermind group or this, that, and the other. What I'm talking about is getting into that flow state, right? Yeah. Everybody knows what I'm talking. Everybody knows I'm talking about 93 Bulls. They know I'm talking about the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night, right? Everything's clicking, right? I drop a pass, a no-look pass. Doc's there to pick it up. He throws it no looky to Steven. Steven's under the rim, easy layup, right? That's what I'm talking about, that flow state. And get in that right room with those people that will put you in that flow state. And here's the biggest thing. You need to start training yourself to keep those away from you, and more importantly, your team, who detract from flow state, right? That's one of the, we talked before about the don't do list. You're talking about things you don't do anymore, Steven, just a moment ago, right? One of the things you need to not do is allow trash to get into your mind on your lines. What's going to slow you and your team down, your family down, right? You got to get that away. That's just as important as any other training we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, yeah, the only thing I would add to that is shout out to Jeff Skinner. Who's typically the third person here. I just don't. The no look pass, he would be much more apt to catch and do the layup. The ball would just hit me in the head, and I just knuckle drag my way across the basketball court the next time. So let's call it like it is. Jeff, shout out to you, buddy.
Just where it's at all the time.
Pippin's not on the floor tonight, but we 6 man up.
KC, straight talk in the mic.
Straight talk in
the mic. That way they can hear that Barry Manilow voice. You know what I'm talking about?
Got to talk directly.
Don't look over there.
The
mic
smooth,
over there.
silky jazz.
That's it. That's what we talking about.
Patriot Business Alliance, brought to you tonight by Jeff Skinner and Black Level AV. Why don't we go ahead and cue up a little baby making jazz for Jeff Skinner, who's taking the night off.
Who's just taking care of business out there? That's what we're talking about.
We're talking about TCB, Skinner.
Man, you mentioned some really good stuff just now. And what really stuck in my brain, man, was the word training and the word flow state and how those mesh with each other. I read this really great book, and I recommend it to anybody out there that really wants to dive deep into this flow state, this training methodology, this mindset shift called Stealing Fire. All right. Book. Get it on audio book, get it on a sign language. I don't care how you get the information, but this book dives so deep into the DevGuru unit with the Navy SEALs. They dive deep into the Google CEOs and how Google just smashes everything that they touch. The NASA scientists, how they work in flow state, how they work together as a unit. Those astronauts, and they just go in and they just really consistently train day in, day out. So if you have a small business, if you are an entrepreneur, understand those people out there, those Bezos, those people that you aspire to be, have put in the work, put in the training, put in the hours, and put in the, all of that work and the grit and the grind that it takes, because and training should be a foundation to anybody's company in order for them to reach the epitome of success, what it's in their mind.
Well, if it's okay, can I jump in?
Yeah, jump.
Anytime, man.
Okay.
That's what
All
it's
right.
about.
So when it comes to training, okay.
No,
We got a
I want to
quick-
hear what I just putting this so where we can both share.
Well, I mean, I think
Kind of like
it's-
being in church. I'm going to let you read my book of common prayer because you forgot yours. It's fine.
I understand.
It's
Well, I
always in the
had it.
podium.
It's
So
in the-
it's just something that it's just something that y'all had touched on, and that is how how your mindset can get stuck in, I don't want to call it autopilot, but it can get stuck in this you can call it complaint. There's a lot of different words for it, but the reality is if you're not thinking or surrounding yourself with people who have a different perspective than you, like for instance, my wife does this for me a lot, right? So where I'm essentially recanting back to her what took place in a sales call, or I'm talking to her about the last week that I had. And there's probably 4 or 5 different opportunities that she could take and correct me. Right. I mean, if you have, shout out to all wives out there who, hold their tongue and let their husbands kind of put enough rope out there to hang themselves with, if you know what I'm saying. But when it comes to being corrected, she allows you to kind of sit in the things that you screwed up. And if you give yourself enough time, you realize that those screw ups or those mistakes or those uncomfortable moments where things didn't go according to plan, those are really your biggest learning opportunities. You don't always learn from what you do right. You always you have the biggest opportunity to learn from what went wrong.
But how are we going to be able to avoid some of those pitfalls? And I think it boils down to what are those systems, processes, and are you implementing that into your personal life as a dad, as a husband, your business life as a CEO, CFO, or whatever O's that are out there? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I'm the world's worst, folks. I'm telling you right now, 5, 10, 15 years ago when I started this madness, I had zero training and I didn't care if I trained the people, but then I got idle. I got what you blocked in the brain, where I was just like, you know what? It's all me. I don't care about it. You're right. Never looked at the big picture, never took the blinders off, and just stayed in that complacency mode, stayed in that. Yeah. What it really is almost a self-doubt kind of a deal, where you're at this precipice of a turning point, and your brain got this self-doubt going, man, if I take this leap, am I going to, what if I fail?
Well, I think just 2-3 weeks ago, there was some data that came out about the way that folks train themselves now. I think TikTok as an application actually took over YouTube as the most watched. I can't remember if it was the most watched or the most number of minutes that were watched. And so it just
way to go, TikTok.
It just dovetails back to, the point that I was making relative to what are you spending your time doing? If you're spending your time doing the things that aren't going to help you get over those mental barriers or those screw ups, then you're most likely going to go backwards. You're not necessarily going to stay where you're at, because you're either progressing or regressing in nature. Nothing really stagnates, right? You're inherently you're moving backwards if you're staying the same.
Yeah, if you're staying still, I completely agree with you, Stephen. If you're standing still, that means you're moving backwards. And just here's the easiest example of that, ladies and gentlemen of the United States of America, that 6 $100 bills out of every $1,000 did not exist a year ago. Right? So that means that $10,000 that's in a shoebox under your bed is now worth less than it was a year ago, because there's more money in circulation. So I just want you to think about that, right? You've got $10,000 for that rainy day that you're never going to need, right? When was the last time you needed it? And maybe you do need it. And maybe it's not unwise to have 60, 90, 120, 180 days of forward thinking cash flow sitting around, maybe invested, so you can grab it in case there's another mandate from the government that says you can't go to work, you're not important. Sorry, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, but the government's just going to give you the money.
Right. But what they're going to do is they're going to make that money less, right? With inflation, with policies, with pressure from foreign trade. Doesn't really matter. What I'm saying, though, is that money was sitting still in the shoebox. It's worth less today than it was a year ago. And every year it's like that, right? So if you're standing still, you're getting smaller just by default because everything else is getting bigger. And, that autopilot, man, doing things on autopilot can be helpful. But I like definitions. You guys know it drives you crazy, right? Acting without conscious thought as a result of routine or habit. That can be a great thing when we're talking about going to the gym or what am I going to wear today? I know I'm always going to wear red, white, and blue, a blue shirt, a blue suit, or a gray suit, right? And you know who I learned that from? The last two of our last presidents, President Obama and President George H.W. Bush. Both of them had that same policy. I have so many decisions to make in a day. I need the suit that I wear to look American AF, and I don't need to put a whole lot of thought into it, right? Same basic uniform every single day, just like in the military, right? You got a lot of hard decisions to make. You got to make them at attack speed. You don't need to be worried about, well, am I going to wear the BDU with the cargo on this side, or you don't have time to make those decisions.
Simplification,
right? And then the other way to do that, right? One thing is systems and processes. And here's a hard lesson on systems and processes. This morning I did a live on StreamYard. I'm still relatively new to being a user on StreamYard. I've always relied on Jeff and Doc to set this up, make it run. And I don't really know how to use it myself. I thought I did, and I got it working good the other day, but didn't use it last week, right? So I got a little rust. And then this week I tried to use it this morning, and it took me 15 minutes to remember how to figure it out because I didn't make notes. I didn't write a procedure. I didn't have a system in place. So I had to relearn what is a very simple set of steps because I didn't have a policy and procedure. Therefore, I couldn't make it a habit, right? That's why you go to the gym every day. See, get a habit. Boom.
I'm a firm believer, and that's where training takes place. Like you nailed it on the head. I know when I was in the service, you didn't want to have to think what you're going to eat, what you're going to do. We had one job, and you mastered that job to its best of your ability, and they took the thought process out of it, which is almost kind of a brainwashing. So we won't go too deep into that.
Yeah.
So watch. I'll try you overkill, train wash. We don't want to brainwash your employees, or do we?
Yeah, no, I think there's a you got to make training engaging. If TikTok's the new thing, man, that kind of worries me about attention span because TikTok videos are extremely short. So, one thing that I remember coming up through school, through training, when we were talking about opening statements, closing statements, things that you're going to do to making presentations, 16 and a half minutes to no more than 20 minutes was in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was coming up in sales training and, presenting legal arguments in court training. That was that's the model, right? 16 and a half to no more than 20 minutes. If it's 20 minutes and 30 seconds, they haven't heard the last 5 minutes. They really will start tuning you out. Now, we understand from YouTube, right? It's 4.5 minutes. I mean, I'm worried about what TikTok's going to do to the attention.
We're down to 2 live viewers, and one of them's me because we understand, right? Attention span, like our time is limited. And you bring up a real good point. When we are training our employees,
right?
How do we gainfully keep them engaged? So what are some of the things that you do at Knucklehead when you bring somebody on that keeps their attention? Because podcasting isn't fast. I mean, it's in being an IT, it isn't, you know what I mean? It can be, for me personally, it can become mundane, monotonous, and just kind of a downright boring. But obviously there's people out there that have a certain passion for it.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you got to know I think it's a great question. You got to know your audience, right? And to be honest with you, when it comes to producing anything, you got to realize what you're not good at and realize that, you're wasting your time. The point that you were making earlier about the live and the repetition with StreamYard, the reality is you could pay somebody, or you could have somebody who's an intern come in and do a lot of those steps for you, so you don't have to ever learn it, right? I mean, that's just an example. You can train yourself to do those things, or you can have somebody else go do it. The best way to optimize is to outsource in a lot of cases, not in every case, but in a lot of cases. So I started, just to give you an example from personal experience, and then I want to tie it back to how we work with our folks now. And I'll give you an example of a much better organization that does a much better than we do, that is actually here local, that actually started out near Sulphur Springs. Anyway, the wasted man hours of me putting together my own shows then coordinating guests, then putting together what I call snippets or micro content to get distributed to attract people's attention. Because when I say your audience, you got to know where the platform that you're getting the most traction is. So if you're getting more podcast traction than you are, maybe social traction, then the reality is people like what you have to say. They want to stay with you. They're interested in what's just beyond the surface. If people are more interested in your social content, then, for lack of a better term, then they're surface. And you got to know your audience that way. And so you got to be able to feed your audience what it is that they need. So they may need more 10 to 15 second snippets with a lot of animation and production, as opposed to long form content. There's not really anything sexy or crazy about Joe Rogan's content. It's just that he's willing to have long form content. What's the most popular podcast on the planet?
Patriot Business Alliance.
Outside of Joe Rogan, yeah, Patriot Business Alliance. But
I don't know.
The point. It's Joe Rogan. It's Joe Rogan's, because he's willing to engage in content that's not necessarily mainstream. It's just they're mainstream type topics where he gets folks to come in to speak on those topics.
Right.
Just like you need an audio editor to do your audio work, because they hear things differently than what we do. You need somebody who's well versed in technical writing to write things that are very technical. You need things like a creative writer to actually write content that's surfaceable by the way that Google crawls content. And so a good way to do that for net new employees, there's an organization that we used to work with here locally called Access eForms. Davin Marceau and Tim Elliott, phenomenal business owners and operators, quite frankly, that are here in the Heath, Rockwell area. And they actually have a concept called Colby's and Cliftons, where every single individual who comes to their organization, they know the way that they think. They know whether they're a high starter. They know whether they're like I'm going to screw it up. So Tim, don't throw the keyboard at me. But the reality is there's different types of individuals, and they know what they are based off those classifications. So Davin, who's the operator of that business, he has the minute and 10 second rule. That's the Tim rule. If it takes longer than a minute and 10 seconds to tell something to somebody who's a quick start, you're going to lose them.
Yep.
Right. And if somebody's not that way, they're going to be highly analytical, and then they're going to get in execution mode. Well, that's what Davin does.
Right.
So they have
I'm that minute to 10 second guy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I totally get it. You're a quick start. Right. But you have to constantly be going.
That's right.
And that's exhausting to some people.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But it's exhausting for you to be around some other people that are like that also.
Yeah. It'll drive me crazy if I get too idle for too long. And so that's probably some of the biggest struggles I find myself in business is I want to train them, but I also want them to catch on, like, what's the issue, And so being a business owner, by my business coach, it's been suggested, well, you just focus on what you really think they need to know, which is the core values, what my expectations are, and what are their expectations of me. Right. So that's part of our initial training platform, is getting them educated on our core values of God, health, and wealth, and entertainment. I had that a few months ago. You got to be able to smile, right? And then going over what their expectations are, of a company and of themselves. And they asked, well, why would you want to know that about them? And I was like, well, if I know what their expectations of me are, then I'll know how to better train them and put them in the right seat in order to make this bus go a little bit faster. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like your God, health, and wealth. I think you can be wealthy in a lot of things. I think
that's correct.
Right. Your entertainment is something that you want to be wealthy at. You want to be having fun, right? You want to have a wealth of entertainment.
Otherwise, what's the point?
What's the point?
I mean, otherwise, if we ain't smiling, then I don't know what I'm doing here.
I mean, even in the darkest of jobs we've all had. Look, everybody, you've all survived your darkest day. And I know a lot of you have had a lot darker days than a lot of others. And I'm not making light of any of that, but you got to keep smiling through that pain, because the night is always darkest before the dawn. And you've got to be wealthy in entertainment, right? You got to have a wealth of humor and love and laughter, even in the dark times, right? And sometimes it's in those moments, right? Those moments where it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you're trying to deliver on a project. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and you're in a situation that was very, very difficult, whether that's business, military, personal, doesn't matter. that's where you got to have some of that you got to bring that light. You got to have that wealth and you got to bring that humor, that you got to get that lift. Right. And that's another thing, right? That we're talking about brainwashing, how to interact with your team, right? You got to give it a lift. It's got to be fun, right? And it's also got to be frequent, right? The contact has to be frequent. This is something that I'm realizing myself, whereas before I was doing a little more one-on-one focused, right? Just me, just Steve, just me, just Mike.
Right.
Now it's like, no, whole team. I don't care if it's for 4 minutes,
right,
or 14 or 20, but it's going to be every day. It's every day. And it's just so that we're all, for just a brief moment, right? We're all together.
Well, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what do y'all know about the app Kahoot? Have y'all ever heard of that before? Kahoot.
Like
I download it.
Kahoot.
Do I download
Well,
it?
no. This is just kind of a practical application thing. It's everybody's interested. Not everybody. A lot of people are interested in gaming, right?
Sure.
So gamification of your team culture. So prior to your next team event, Kahoot's a way that you can actually have like a little quiz and compete against each other amongst your team.
Okay.
To have some fun, to get some people engaged. That's exactly it right there.
Nice. Downloading.
Yeah, if you're in the chat, you're watching this on replay or in live, just go to Kahoot. If you run a team, it's a fun way to get people to compete against each other. They have a limited amount of time to have a preset series of questions, and it's a fun way to mix it up a little bit. So,
well, I am signing up for it right now. It looks fun.
Yeah, there you go.
So you guys are all gonna be in Kahoots.
Ah, funny little play on words. Da-da-da.
That's what I do.
Mark,
Entertainment.
all hero.
That's
What's the drum roll there?
That's what we do.
Done. Hey, he's here all week, folks.
It's all week.
Well, but hang on, let's get back to what we're talking about is wealth and entertainment, but we're also talking about customer service. That's the whole point of this week's training, is like, how do you bring that lift customer service in those moments? You can't replicate the pressure of a client melting down because a project isn't delivered on time. But if you don't practice it, I promise you. Now, whether you practice it on Kahoot, right? Like, how do you deal with client melting down? I don't know how we're going to make that a fun question, but you better figure out how, because it's going to happen.
I can tell you how.
It's going to happen. But here's the thing, right? Like, what creates fear, right? The unknown, right? So how do we deal with fear, right? We simulate situations to take away the unknown and to build confidence, to give the team that lift. You know what? They're going to think about that moment. We're like, hey man, you remember we were in that training and we're eating that good pizza and we're playing that Kahoot game and everybody was having a yuck and Michael was being super funny. And now here we are in that actual moment. Dude is melting down because his 90 square foot roof is
caving in.
Well, it's not delivered on time.
Yeah.
We got another hurricane coming. Something is happening. We got another coronavirus, right? And somebody's frustrated because their goods are not under a dry roof as promised on time. How do we deal with that situation? If we didn't practice it, like, well, shucks. Maybe can you just stop chewing my ass for a minute? Sorry, Keith. Stop chewing my ass for a minute so I can call my boss in Dallas. That's not going to work. Right? But just not going to work.
But training is designed to help our team become problem solvers.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so if one of my team members gets put into those situations and they're unable to get out of that situation, then it is a failure on my training program, right? Because that's part of understanding and overcoming objections. It's part of what happens when shit hits the fan. What are those team members able to think on their own and be reactionary, right? And do they have the confidence? 90% of dealing with somebody that is upset at a situation is being able to speak to them back with confidence and with a smile. I will take you off a freaking ledge just by showing up and being confident and smiling and making them laugh. There is a therapeutic value of whatever it is to brighten somebody's day. Right. And I practice and I do this consistently. Any person that I come across and I can tell if they're having a shitty day, and I will turn around and make them happy. Right. Because I'll ask them some dumb question. It doesn't even make sense, but you know what I mean? But what it has done, it has shifted their mind from an angry thought process to a humorous thought process. And now it didn't really matter because 90% of the shit that we go through doesn't really matter anyways.
True.
Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's all about how you respond to it. Everything goes back to, so you always default back to your lowest level of training. That's what sticks out to me based off this of what we're talking about here. So if your lowest level of training is you never deal with problems, then when there's a problem, there's your answer. If you're fairly well suited at dealing with problems, but you've never spent time working with your team on when they're gonna have to deal with a problem, then there's your biggest problem. It's not necessarily the presence of problems, it's how you respond to them and how do you reinforce when those other problems start to arise. So as I've noticed here in the curriculum, we talked about, we're talking a little bit about communication in, verbal, nonverbal, and in how training, I think it's interesting. We can dive into this more if we want to, how the absence of standards in each one of those areas, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, and then also the training environments. If there's no standards there, then isn't it just like playing basketball but not keeping score? It's a little bit, for lack of a better term. I know we got some ladies probably watching, but like a circle jerk. It's like it doesn't do anybody any good, and it barely is even fun at the time.
Right.
It's not a.
Sorry, Keith.
Yeah. So it's not a. There's really no, and sales guys talk about this all the time, where they don't like to role play. In my experience, sales guys who don't like to role play or go through a scenario, they don't want to appear as if they don't know what they're talking about.
That's right. You will punch people right in their ego. Right. You will call somebody out. Like I role play. So when I had a couple of new interviews come through, right? And they were, and one of the people, they were like, yeah, man, I've been doing this. I'm sales, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, cool, knock on my door. And they're like, what? I said, knock on my freaking door. I said, get out of my office, knock on my door and sell me a roof. And he was like, what do you, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, and I told him, I said, well, look, don't come into the room and be egocentric and be ready, you know what I mean? And talk about killing. And then the next thing it's time to do the job and you fall. Right. And so it kind of upsets me sometimes, you know what I mean? I've been doing sales for a very, very long time. And I don't even brag or talk that's what I love to do. I have a passion of meeting people. And that's why it boils down to relationship driven. And that's some foundation of the company, both companies that I work with is relationship driven. And I embed that, right? And I consistently, this is over and over again. I said, it's never about the dollar. It's always about the relationship, which will bring the most profit, right? Because
it absolutely will.
Because we begin with what? The end in mind, right? We have to understand where we want to end up before we can even start the race.
That's so true. And if you're, here's the thing about not being, I think this, one of my favorite things that, and you just made, turn that light on for me. Zig Ziglar said years ago, and I remember my dad was trying to teach me about this when I was a kid because he was an outside salesman. And, the thing about Zig was like, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough people get what they want. Right. And that's exactly what you said, Mike. Like, start with the end in mind. You want to build that relationship because you don't want the one sale, right? You want the second sale. You want the, hey, Northcutt, great job on the AC.
Great job on the AC, bro. Like I'm freezing.
Iceman on the corner here.
All care comfort solution. You have definitely took care of my comfort.
This room is this berthing compartment is operating
Frigid.
It feels like a berthing compartment on the Great Lakes in January. It's nice in here, Ben.
Growing hair right now.
So the thing is, though, is that if you're doing that, right? I mean, what's unethical about selling somebody a roof that they need, right? Or Steven, when you're talking about, hey, look, I want to turn no leads or cold leads into warm leads and customers. I can help you do that through targeted marketing, using communication, using different kinds of communication. Podcasting is just one of the ways I can do that. There's nothing unethical about what you're delivering there. You're delivering a relationship that will solve a problem. And if you're going to solve a problem, what's the problem? Why can't you go knock on that door? Right. That's the thing, right? Why can't you go knock on that door and sell me that roof? Because you don't believe in it. Because you're not motivated about the relationship, right? That's the only reason there was hesitation.
It was the confidence factor, the training factor, the knowledge and the know-how. It typically breaks somebody down.
Yeah.
But again, I think the topic of training is paramount with any company, with any family, with anything. I mean, we train as homeowners. What if somebody were to break in your home? What are you going to do? You train if your house catches on fire. What are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Every day we're consistently training, right? When we drive our vehicles, we are so trained that as soon as we see a red light, we know to stop. We don't even think about it.
We don't.
It is subconscious, and that's where we
just
kind of wrap this whole deal up, and that's where we get into that flow state.
Yeah.
Right.
When you say flow state, some people may call it something else. What would you call it? I mean, can you describe flow state and break it down?
I mean, for me, I always go back to this: 93 Bulls, 72-10. Right, that's flow state. That's the easiest definition in my mind because of my generation. Right, that is a team that operated at excellent, impeccable perception. Think about, for people who are not basketball fans. Think about, what did Peyton Manning have 2 record-setting seasons where he had the most prolific offense in the history of any professional football? Or I mean, just, what did they scored like an average of 40 billion points a game or so? Who cares, right? That's flow state where everybody's operating at a level of excellence.
Yeah,
and that's what the military drill's for, right? You get 300 knuckleheads, right? You get 300 kids who graduated in the upper quartile of the bottom 39%, who are dumb enough to be handed a fire hose or a fire pump and be put on a burning or sinking boat, right? But 12 weeks ago, they didn't know nothing about nothing. They were all little shucksters from every little corner of the United States. They all had different length of hair. Some had earrings, some had, buzz cuts, some had nose rings, this, that, and the other in 6 weeks if you're in the Air Force. But for the rest of us, a little bit longer, but at the end of that process, right, policies, procedures, core values are implemented, right? They're ingrained upon people. And then the next thing you know, man, they're jumping on boats that are sinking or jumping out of helicopters or fast roping down into danger to help people who've been hurt, right? I mean, it's just that quick. So that's flow state to me. Right? So how do you get there, right? Do you need to go to a boot camp, right? Like, how do we do that? How do we do that in our business?
Training.
We call that get some wins.
It's training. So, well, I think in me, because again, I drive a lot of this from the books that I read with, again, that book, Stealing Fire, and you look, Think and Grow Rich. And then there's,
no, turn that AC back on.
He's wearing a wool suit, folks. Like he's not on the Great Lakes anymore. So, you know what I mean? And we're flow state is ether. Right now, we are essentially in flow state.
We are.
We can almost complete each other's sentences, right? Because as people, we share an energy, right? Our person is made up of the central nervous system, which produces electricity, which sends out energy, which you feel, and I feel. And it's the same concept of you're feeling extremely shitty and you walk into a room where everybody's extremely happy. You no longer feel extremely sad because everybody's happiness is so contagious. Just like when you go to church and that song comes on, right? And everybody's, hallelujah, amen, or little tear jerks come on. That whole congregation has gone into flow state.
Yeah.
Because everybody's energy is jiving. Everybody's energy is working in unison with one. Just like a Navy SEAL SWAT team, a quick reaction fire team.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those people go into flow state just like that, subconsciously, because it has been embedded and ingrained and done consistently over and over again. And that's why training is so damn paramount in anything that you do in life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Steve, you got something?
Any save round, Steve?
Well, I mean, I really don't have anything much to share there other than to say, I think that whether people are running a business or they're operating within a business, it's difficult for them to get to that point because because of their standards. And, I know I'm just speaking from my experience. I've had a difficult time in the past developing the momentum necessary if I heard something like flow state or like a people sharing wins, to me, it would feel a little weird.
Right.
It would be like, all right, that's not necessarily how I roll. So I would have to start with something super small and develop momentum over time, getting around that different thought process, what we call kind of getting some wins, to develop the inertia and the momentum necessary to get out of that rut.
We like to call it change your mindset, change your playground.
Yeah.
Then there's another really powerful trainer that talks about. He talked about, I think it was overcoming post-traumatic stress, whether you're military, paramilitary, whatever the case may be.
First responder.
Yeah, first responder.
Just been through some shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Keith.
He talks about, I think he did it on a TED Talk, where the best way to do that, rather than standing, above an individual and looking down at them, is to jump into wherever that scenario is with them, similar to what you're talking about, similar to what you do. And that's the best way to get out of there, is to say, hey, listen, not only am I in here with you, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Here's how we're going to get out.
Here's the exit. Here's the freaking way out. So, Stephen, I want to first thank you foremost for taking your time out to come up here, share your information about what you do, who you are. Former Marine. So he's definitely a true patriot, and he does great things with his company and his business partners with Knucklehead Podcast. So we highly recommend you guys go out there, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. I just try to sometimes list as many as I can remember.
Yeah, wherever you can get your podcast, you can also get PBA. So
thank you for that.
Patriot Business Alliance.
It was actually Stephen that actually took us from the Facebook Live and the YouTube Live into the Spotify and into the iTunes world and the iHeartRadio and whatever the millions of plethoras of different ways people now get their information.
They were the 200th ranked podcast in the country of, I think it was the Singapore or the Philippines. I can't remember, for entrepreneurship last week.
The PBA?
Yeah.
200 folks. Boom.
Winning.
Winning. Thank you, Singapore.
So it's
Mugu got paint.
When you say stuff like that, folks that we've worked with in the past are like, well, all right, is that, did people really download? What's cool is you can utilize analytics to actually validate somebody's place on those charts. Those are third-party analytics. It's vetted from somebody else. We got no vested interest in helping them hit those goals. Right. That's just them doing it. So pretty cool.
Hey, look, we're relationship building, and we've been lucky enough. We got some amazing people commenting and chatting tonight. Thank you all for joining us, for commenting. We appreciate it. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. But we've had people as far away as South Africa.
Yeah.
We've had Singapore acknowledge. And look, the whole point of this is
Ohio.
Right. Maine. Maine. Thanks, Maine.
You know what I mean?
Right. So what's amazing about all that is that it's truly about relationship building. And if your goal is to build relationships, making an impact on social over time, making social a force for good, using it for what it truly can be, right? Which is experience changing, life changing, flow state changing, right? Changing that mindset, shaking the trash off your lines, turning, everybody's going to get down, man. You're going to get down. Even you start the day off right? You wake up, read your Bible, have your coffee, you get your workout in, and then you hit a tripwire. And then what do you do next? Man, you got to get back up.
Yeah. That's where the training takes place. Man, I know we could talk all night about these things. We've hit the top of the hour. A lot of us got to get back home to the wives and the family and the kiddos. And so we respect that of our wives and our children. So that's all we got for this evening, gents. Again, thank you so much, Stephen, for popping in. Casey, always, Law Dog coming on, killing it one more again on a Wednesday. So looking forward to next week.
Wait, what's tomorrow?
$10,000 Thursday.
$10,000 Thursday.
Y'all better write that shit down.
Yeah, if you're not taking notes, take notes on what tomorrow is. See you next week.
Thanks for having me. See you guys.
Thank you, Stephen.
You bet.